to all those above me that watch over me, to all of you, my fave parapeeps on this side of the veil, welcome. This is the Paranormal Ministry. I'm your host, Sean Whittington. I am a seminarian in the United States Old Catholic Church, and I'm coming to you live from my haunted home, my very haunted home, where I live. Great show today. You all know what's coming. I hope you're all ready. If there's anything you want to know about my wife and I and our ministry work, go to our website, www.ghost-b-gone.biz. And everything you want to know about us is there. It's the second greatest story ever told. Bum, bum. Thank you very much. I'll be here all day. Um, it's First Friday, and you know what that means. She's back. Every first Friday is our monthly series with my very special co-host who's in the green room. It is Christian Supernatural, and I can only imagine what we're going to discuss today. And I know it's gonna, she always knocks my socks off. Today she won't be able to because I'm not wearing socks. I got flip flops on, but I know it's going to be a great show. So without further ado, please let's give a big, warm paranormal ministry family welcome to my beautiful co-host, talented, passionate co-host, the one and only. We're lucky there is only one of her. Can we handle more than one of her? EIRA WULFNOTHSSON.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Very well.
Okay, so I just basically uh, episode 3 today. The first two were huge
Oh.
hits. Um, and I get so excited for this day. I know that we always have excellent conversations about things, and you've just been through. You're just such an interesting person. You've been through so much, experienced so much. You're like the ultimate boots on the ground, been there, done that type person in our field, whatever that field it is that you're in. So uh, how have you been? What has happened recently in the last
Nothing.
month? Oh, how was your Valentine's Day?
I I don't remember. I don't have Valentine's Day. I mean,
uh,
I don't have a Valentine. I have 3 dogs. So
well, me too. I have one. I think what did we do about? I think my wife brought me home a beautiful
Mhm.
card and some lunch or some dinner that
Oh,
day from work, which was nice.
yeah.
And I made her a homemade card because I don't have a car and I never go out. So I made her a homemade card, and I think I did extra. Like, have you ever seen that old movie with Michael Keaton called Mr. Mom?
No.
Well, if you ever watch it, I'm that guy.
Ah,
I'm like
okay.
the housewife here. I like being the housewife. Um, and so I don't do the greatest job at it, but
Thank
it is
goodness.
it is what it is. Um, so talk to me. How are you feeling?
Everything's normal and non-remarkable. I have nothing remarkable to report at all.
That's a good thing. That can be a very good thing.
Yep. All I have is the history of Satan here for you. And that's about it.
That's right. You did send me a message. That's what you wanted to cover, and I went, "Ooh,
Yeah.
good topic." So I'm going to let you go. Oh, you know what?
What?
I did. I did make some notes
Yeah.
for today, and but I'm not going to even talk about my notes until we
Yeah.
get into the conversation, see where it goes. But that sounds like a very interesting topic. I get questioned about him all the time. In the seminary, I have not got to that. You know, my bishop, I love him to death, Bishop James
Mm-hmm.
Long. He sent me all his private um, private files on
Hmm.
all of his experience taking authority over exorcisms and
Yeah.
spiritual warfare and all that. I haven't even cracked that open yet because I'm so busy in all my other classes and studies. I'm looking forward to getting into that and looking forward to when we do. I know somewhere in this training there'll be demonology, true Catholic
Mm-hmm.
demonology course. So I'm looking forward to that. But Like I said, you've been there, done that. Um, so the big guy, uh, what would you like to tell us about the big guy and take us on this journey, whatever journey you have planned for us today? What would
Well,
you like us all to know about the big guy?
yeah, I think the most important thing is whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, it's important to really realize um, the spiritual reality that we exist in, and if we ignore that, then we're vulnerable to it. So all of our ancestors in every culture, in every different religion, all the different spiritual disciplines, they've all been, since the beginning of time, trying to tell us about this great enemy that we have and the reality of that enemy. Um, there are many names for this entity, there are many incarnations, but they all are referring to the same person. They're referring to Satan. And if you look at the texts and the testimony for thousands of years, they're all very similar. In Samaria, in Mesopotamia, all through the Middle East, even in Africa, the description of this entity that we know as Satan is always referred to in the same way with the same story, especially in the Middle East, in Mesopotamia and Samaria. The story of Enlil is like a carbon copy to the biblical story of Satan, or the texts that are closely related to the Bible. So we know that there is an entity that exists. Most of your audience is spiritually in tune. Um, what's unfortunate is in today's society, anything goes. All ghosts are good. All spirits are good. Everything's beautiful. UFO abductions are good. And we're really living in denial because evil spirits, whether they be demon or fallen angel, they have all the time in the world. They're, compared to us, they're immortal. They do have a finite ending at some point, but they're immortal, and they come on just like psychopaths. If you want to understand a psychopath, study demonology. So they will court you, they will appear as anything you want, anything beautiful. And then, of course, the cycle turns from the honeymoon phase to the destructive phase. And then once you're almost completely dead, boom, they lift you back up again and it starts all over. So I think that we have to become wise to the fact of what's happening with these beings, and that all these happy beings that give us information and come through mediums and, help us with divining, and they can tell the future. They can't really tell the future, because not even Satan can tell the future. God had a fail-safe plan that with all these entities that are existing, the demons, the fallen angels that are attacking mankind, the one thing they don't know is the future, and they can't read your mind. Neither can Satan, but they can make good guesses. So right there, when you are encountering ghosts that give you information, mediums, etc., we can look at astrology, we can look at numerology, we can look at the books of the sky and the sea and the land, nature, and we can make some good guesses. But the spirits do the same. They can only make good guesses. So when God created creation, he created it in a very legalistic way. So there are laws. We have physical laws, we have spiritual laws. Physical laws, we know them, physics and the law of thermodynamics, we have gravity, we have these immutable laws that we all understand. You can't, it's impossible to break them. Well, there's also a spiritual realm, which we all acknowledge exists on this show anyway. And those spiritual laws are immutable. And so God created the universe based on both physical and spiritual laws. And the spiritual laws, the biggest three, top three at the hierarchy, the most important are love, which holds everything in the universe together. God is love. Without God's love and God's will, everything, the tapestry would unravel. It's his will that keeps things going. Love rests upon free will. We wouldn't have love or be capable of love without free will. So, free will, God wrote that into the universe as a law, an immutable law. Everyone is born, you've all read it in the Constitution, etc. That's
Mhm.
where it came from. Now, when you have love and free will, you know what happens with free will. We all know where that can go at times. And so, justice, the third law in the Golden Triangle, had to be written into the universe. And we know justice only through our United States legal system or whatever, but it is written into the universe. Justice, an example, is the law of cause and effect. If this, then that. And then there's the law of rhythm, which is the pendulum. So when the pendulum swings out as you're about ready to attack someone, or you're about ready to even think something ugly, or you're about ready to commit an act of, a wrong, the pendulum swings out and then it swings back at you with the same force that you swung it out. Always, it's a law. And so, as a spiritual law, whatever evil you commit or have a hand in, you will eventually, if not now, 10 years from now, next life, heaven, whatever, purgatory, sorry, that pendulum is going to come back with the same force that you swung it out with. So that's just a spiritual law, justice, written in to keep free will in check. And free will is what love rests upon, because you can't have true love without the freedom of choice to love or not to love. No one wants to be loved because you're programmed to, or you're an automaton. So with these laws that God wrote into the universe, and there are millions of these laws that hold the universe together, he had that wisdom, and with the first being that he created outside of the pre-incarnate Christ, of course, which is the second person of the Trinity, the first actual creature he created second to him only, and that was Lucifer. That's Satan. So your enemy that you're dealing with is also an expert in the legalistic aspects of the universe. He knows all of God's laws in a way that is, you can't even dream of how well this being knows God's laws. And if you can imagine God, he is an angel that was created second only to God. This is who you're dealing with when you're dealing with Satan. He's not some guy in a red leotard with Halloween horns on his head. This is an epically intelligent, magnificent, once magnificent being that was created to be the most beautiful, the most powerful, the most amazing creation, second to God. Not second, Christ is God, so I'm not comparing him to Christ. But you're dealing with someone who knows the laws of creation, doesn't have to learn anything because they were all put into him instantly. And this is who you're dealing with, who went up against God because of his pride. So when we look at pride, the word pride, a lot of things come to mind, which, anyway, yeah, bad choice of words for a club or a group. Pride is the mother of all sins. So the 7 deadly sins that most of us know about, I'm not going to say all of us here know what they are, sloth, greed, lust, envy, wrath, gluttony, those sins. Pride is the mother of all sin. And so when Satan fell because of his pride, it was because he was this magnificent creature. So I want to share a few things with you.
Please do. Let me enter. You said something about pride, real quick. I've had many exorcists that I've met and talked to that I admire, that I know have really. I'll ask you later on in this show, if you ever, how often do you think this entity actually is there fighting you, and not someone he has sent? But they, many of them have told me, as often as you can say it, recite the litany of humility. And so I do try to
Yeah.
to recite that as often as possible.
Well, when we talk about pride, it's a little bit complex because pride, we have the saying pride goes before a fall, but there's, you know, constructive pride where you have pride of being a child of God, or you have pride in your children, or there's certain kinds of pride that are okay. It's the kind of pride that says, I am my own God. I can do whatever I want. My truth, even if it's antithetical to nature, is the truth. So this is when pride gets crazy. You can't make night day. Day is not night. You can't make pure water burn. You can't turn a man into a woman. These are immutable things in nature. And what you can't learn about everything you need to know in scripture, which scripture, somebody might chuckle at that if they're not a Christian, but scripture has psychology. It has, the laws that you need to know in the spiritual as well as the physical. I mean, it gives you an answer to everything. But what you can't find in scripture, God has given you books in the book of nature. And what is in nature is correct. Everything in nature is correct. It's the way it should be. So anything, which is anti nature or doesn't exist in nature is a wrong. So we have the knowledge of rights and wrongs in nature of how to be. We have the book of the sky, we have the book of the sea, we have the book of the land. So pride, again, as demonstrated in nature, um, doesn't exist with animals and plants, and it's just not there. It's foreign. It's not of God. It's something that was birthed by Satan himself as the father of lies, and he is the father of that evil aspect of pride. But when he was created, he was one of the most magnificent creatures. And there's an interesting part to his creation. So, in just 6 Hebrew words, Satan was revealed to be the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. God describes him as being the seal of measurement and proportion. And a seal is the hot wax that's used to make sure a scroll stays closed. So you see the connection to the 7 seals on the scrolls and how holy this being was. And so when a scroll is sealed, and Satan was considered to be God's seal, it needs no finishing touches. So this means he was the absolute greatest of God's creatures. He was the gold standard. He was a cup that didn't need to be filled. He was that perfect. And so you can imagine the love that God had for him and how difficult the betrayal was. Because God is love, that may be his one tiny vulnerability. I don't know. God is perfect, God is all powerful, but I think that God does feel pain. I think he does.
Oh
He
yeah,
is able to be hurt. Otherwise he wouldn't want the concept of family and, love. He is love. So,
do you mind if I ask you a quick question?
mhm, yeah.
And it's going to be a quick one because I don't want you to lose your train of thought. In your humble opinion, he's also been referred to as the great shapeshifter, and we're talking about how he was created. We're at that point now, the creation
Mhm.
of Satan.
Yeah.
In your humble opinion, and then you mentioned the guy in the red tights with the horn, the Halloween horns, and the
Yeah.
plastic pitchfork and the tail and all that. In your humble opinion, I'm thinking of a bone chilling interview I had with a gentleman that reached out to me from death row who murdered a priest, and at the behest of what he claims was Satan himself asking him to do this. And I asked him, "How did you know it was Satan?" He said, "When he walked away from me, I could see the wings that had been ripped off of his back, the
Hmm.
stubs that were left." And you hear stories of Satan having his wings ripped. I don't know if Saint Michael did that or if God did that, but in your humble opinion, what do you think Satan really appears like, or do we just not know?
Well, we know what he was. So he was a cherubim, and cherubims. are fiery beings that cover God. They have 3 or 4 sets of wings, 4 faces, and the 4 faces are a bull, an eagle, a lion, and a man. They're also associated, because of the fiery aspect, with serpentine type look. So serpents are wise. The serpent in the garden was, quote unquote, Satan, the Nakash. Um, certain serpents move in a certain way, like fire, like energy, and they had many eyes covering their body. And because they covered God, they had eyes everywhere. So this is a very spiritual, crazy looking entity that we can't really contemplate. We look at Ezekiel, who talked about this, but they were beings of fire. So they had to be beings of fire because God, as the Father, is a being of fire. Even in the Garden of Eden, when God walked with Adam and Eve were not like us. They were more energy than matter. So that their clothing was described as clothing of light. So when the Nakash tempted Eve and said, God, surely you're not going to die. God didn't mean you were going to die. Go ahead and eat of the tree of good and evil, and you will be like God. And so he used free will to legally entrap Adam and Eve to take the kingdom, right? At that point, when Satan was damned, when God found out and the whole universe started to unravel, because we went down a notch in energy. The moment that Adam took the fruit, God separated heaven and earth. He had to, because at that moment, Satan, the legalistic being that he was in this legalistic universe, had taken what was meant for Adam, because Adam had authority over the earth, over the animals. He was created to have descendants, and everybody was going to make the whole world in Eden. Adam was a prince. And that's why we call Satan sometimes, the prince of the air or of the earth. So when that happened and Satan was cast down, he became the inversion of what he was, this fiery, heavenly, amazing being that then inverted. He lost his light. He lost his fire. He was still a spiritual being and very powerful, didn't lose his memory and his knowledge, but he lost his ability to be heavenly. And so, yes, as time goes on, he gets more gruesome, more ugly. He becomes the Lord of Death. The moment that happened in Eden, that was the moment death entered into the world, because now the earth separated from heaven and God had departed it. Death, decay, and destruction were now under Satan, because Satan legally had hold of the earth. Now, everybody's probably standing up in their chairs saying, well, why didn't God stop that? God is truth. God is goodness. God is honesty. God is truth. God doesn't break his own laws, and Satan knows it. And that's how he gets away with still being present, still being active. He knows that the war was won by Christ, but he also knows that he has time, and he's legally here within the universe. He is behind a veil. He is restrained. But, he's perfectly capable of sending his demons, which are the dead Nephilim spirits, or his fallen angels, which he has. He still is going to fight to the finish. But he knows he's done. He knows he has an end point. But he's going to hurt God as much as he can by hurting us, by hurting the world that we're living in. One day, heaven and earth will once be heaven, earth, heaven is earth and earth is heaven, and God will return with us. And that's, talking about the end of days, which we don't need to talk about today.
I'm right, and it's funny that you're bringing all of this up. I'm right in the middle of those studies right now,
Good.
Revelations and
Yeah.
Acts and all that. Let me ask you another quick
Yeah.
question here. When that happens,
Mm.
and I'm gonna ask my bishop this too. I like to I ask him a ton of questions all the time. Um, in your humble opinion, so after end of days happen, I'm being taught that people like you and I, we won't even. It'll just be that quick. When we may not even hear the trumpet, we're already going to be in heaven and watching the rest of it happen. So after all of that happens, and we have the new heaven and earth, do you think do you think God will want to do this again? There'll be another
Oh,
Eden
it,
and another Adam and Eve, and
well, it was the original plan was for heaven and earth to be one place. The only reason earth is earth and that heaven is separated from us is because of what happened with Adam. Adam had authority over all the earth and all of humanity. When he fell by taking the knowledge of good and evil, when he fell, because he had authority over everything, all his descendants then fell. The animals fell, the earth fell, God departed. God's original plan was for the entire earth to be heaven. I mean, Eden, heaven and earth together. And yes, that will return to that at some point, but we'll all be there. The original progenitor, is that the word I want? The original first being, which began all of us as human beings, was Adam. And so the devil's been trying to, screw up
well, then we
how.
won't have to worry about him ever again. Do you see
No.
another? Do you see another
Well,
Satan coming down the road?
no, 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 because Christ got the deed back. Christ paid the penalty with his blood sacrifice. God himself sacrificed himself to himself and reversed all of that. But Satan, before Christ came, when you saw what happened before the flood, what happened after the flood, you had the Nephilim, which were hybrid demigods. They were Satan's creations. They didn't have a soul that could go to hell. Satan wanted to pollute the gene pool, so Christ couldn't come through the Abrahamic line, Adam's line. And so Satan was trying to get the whole earth, hybridized with beings that would never go to heaven. If you're not created by God, who is a spiritual being and love, you're not going to create. If you're the devil creating humans, they're not going to be fully human. They're not going to have that spiritual aspect. Satan is only half the equation. He doesn't have the love and the second half of God, the heart. He has the intellect only now because he's disconnected from God. We have both. And so anything created by God has both. But in Satan's fall, in rejecting God and rebelling against him, that part was taken from him. That's why we say he was inverted into pure evil. He's fixed forever in the state he's in. And he hates humans. He did not want to bend the knee to Adam, which that's not what God was asking him. So there in the King James version of Ezekiel, there's this passage. It says, and we're talking about Satan, whose original name was Hyleel. Hyleel is one name mentioned in the Bible, which is called Hapax Legomenon. And so in the early texts of Mesopotamia written in Samaria, Satan's name is Hyleel, which actually translates to light bearer, Lucifer in Latin. But it says, thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God, meaning Satan. You've been there. Every precious stone was thy covering. Sardius, topaz, diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, emerald, carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets, which are timbrels, and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day that thou was created. So Satan was wearing a breastplate of gold. It's called a lamen, and it had all these precious stones in it. There were 12 precious stones. So you recognize that from the breastplates that the Hebrew high priests wore when they went into the Holy of Holies. They had to wear this golden lamen with the 12 stones of the 12 tribes of Israel. So you had 12 stones, 12 tribes of Israel. There's 12 apostles, 12 months in a year, 12 stars recorded in Job, 12 hours in a day, 12 gates on the mountain of God, 12 stones is an emblem of authority. And so Satan, when he was assigned to Eden and Adam and Eve and asked to be in service of God, was to be a high priest. He was to spiritually form Adam and Eve in the ways of worship and God and how they would govern the earth. He was the second only to God. God would entrust that to that cherubim. And so we understand now that Eden was not just a garden, it was God's garden, but it was also a temple. And a temple needs a high priest. And that's who Halil, Satan, Lucifer, originally as God's angel, he had such a high position, huge, and it wasn't good enough. He didn't want to bend the knee. So that's what was so terrible about it. So then we talked about the debacle with Adam and Eve, and then the authority structure when Satan fell. 1/3 of the angels or such. I mean, scholars argue over when that maybe that took place at the when Jesus suffered on the cross, and then other people say no, it happened. It was the first fall. I've heard that from different Catholic priests have different perspectives on that. But when he fell, because he was the highest angel, second to God, a lot of angels, 1/3. And we say we get the 1/3 basically because there's 3 choirs. So perhaps the entire authority structure under him fell with him.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how we get the fallen angels. Now, with Mount Hermon and the 200 fallen that Satan sent to pollute the gene pool when they went into the daughters of men, those 200, God was so disgusted with the whole thing that Satan would try to pollute the gene pool for God's arrival. He was incarnating himself as a human being. When they did that, they had to make a pact, and you can still see the stelae over at Philippi Caesarea, I think is how you say it. It's at the foot of Mount Hermon. It's a cave. There's a megalith that says that they made a pact together and came down here. And so those 200, Azazel or gosh, I can't remember the names now of the 2 angels that led that, but the one that was leading said, you have to promise me, we have to make a pact that you're going to go down there and do this, because I don't want to be the only one down there. I'll be left there forever. So when they fell, they couldn't go back. They could not become angelic again. They could not become a spiritual being. They had to become flesh and blood, go into the daughters of men. And that's when they started to pollute the gene pool and create the Nephilim, which when dead became demons. So Satan's been trying to bust a move against God, but God wrote the laws.
Yeah.
He knows the laws. And another thing, God knows the future. So he knows what Satan's moves are going to be. And he's always busting a move on Satan and just shaming him. I mean, Satan never saw Christ coming, God incarnate, and he definitely didn't know it was going to happen on the cross, because Jesus, when he was on the cross, he was talking about being surrounded by the bulls, the baying bulls and the taunting bulls that were around him. Those were the fallen cherubim, the bulls with the faces, and the fallen angels. They were all swirling around taunting him. But he busted a move, because Satan would have never crucified him on the cross. He wouldn't have been betrayed in the garden. They would have never allowed that to happen. But they didn't see the sacrifice of the lamb or the sacrifice of Christ. They didn't put it together. So they're not infallible. So I guess the important part to remember is, Satan was this amazing, beautiful creature. And as long as we understand spiritual law, which if you read scripture, you'll understand spiritual law, and what you don't understand, you'll get through nature, natural law by observing nature, what is right and what is wrong. And there's the word sin, there's a lot of stigma attached to it. People get really offended that aren't Christian, well, sin, what is that? Why do we have to do all these things? But really it's just holistic advice from God saying, you do these things, you're going to hurt, you're going to have trouble, you're going to have the swing of the pendulum come back and hit you. Don't do these things to each other.
Well, I got a question for you. Different sects of religion, do they have different, does Satan have different abilities, or different, even different roles? When it comes to even in different Christianity sects, and is there different roles? Because there's a lot of times that I hear, that he's one thing to one group of people and something different to another group.
Well, the it's called, I think it's called syncretisms of Satan. So you'll see Satan in the mythology is Zeus, or is Ninurta, or is Enlil, or in Rome he was Apollo. I mean, these beings were powerful, and like I said, Satan can be friendly and lovely, and he obeys all the spiritual laws, really. And this is tricky. What people are asleep to is, yes, Satan obeys spiritual laws. When he finds workarounds, and just like a really evil human lawyer would do, he finds all the loopholes and he works them. But the interesting thing, please don't let me lose my train of thought, Lord, please. The interesting thing that we don't remember about it is, I lost my train of thought. Okay.
That's
That's it.
okay. It's okay. You're gonna be okay.
Tell me what
You'll
I
be
was
good.
saying. Nobody thought that
About him
please
being
give it to
the
the
many
legal.
different things and different sects, and also he's like the ultimate evil lawyer that knows all the loopholes and is always trying to
Yeah,
work
he
for.
he shows up as being really lovely, but watch out, because he knows the law better than you do, and he's gonna get you to fall. Now, one of the interesting things is, to stay within the law, he has to tell you what he's going to do to you. He has to show you. And if he can't appear to you and show you, it's going to be in a dream. It's going to be a synchronicity on, you're going to see it through his human agents, where they do preemptive programming, or they do a ritual at the Grammys or the Super Bowl, somewhere where there's a big audience. He has to tell you what's coming down the road. Otherwise, justice kicks in, because he's violated law number 2, big law, free will. He's taken something from you. Satan can't do anything without your consent or permission. You see all the theatrics that scare the crap out of us, but you have to remember that he can't do anything without God saying it's okay, which God doesn't do. I mean, it's rare when, a saint gets possessed, they've agreed to it. Satan has to get your consent. And you see this in the occult world as well, because they know these laws. Well, most of them anyway. And they have to get your consent. Now, your subconscious is fair game to give that consent. And what's a consent from your subconscious? Well, you're not going to be aware of what you're seeing. Your subconscious will be aware of the symbolism that you're seeing, the universal archetype and the ancient symbols that they use in these rituals and they use in these preemptive programming and films. Your subconscious knows what they are. If you don't study symbolism, you're not going to know. By you not being conscious and saying, no, I disagree with that, I don't give my consent, you're giving your consent. So by not saying anything, by not believing it's real or not acknowledging it, you are giving your consent. Therefore, these people will do evil, attack you, kill you, make you suffer. And there will be no this, if this, then that, cause and effect consequence. There will be no swing of the pendulum, because they've achieved your consent.
What do you think about? Oh my gosh, so much of it. Which ones am I gonna
It
pick
opens
here?
a it opens a box, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just you have to study the laws. You have to understand spiritual law. Love, free will, justice, look up the law of rhythm. And they're hermetic principles. They are from Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes thrice great. That is a cult. But they were also studying, Pythagoras and Plato and Socrates. They were all aware of the natural laws. So it's okay as Christians to look at that. I know you get a lot of, don't look at anything with the occult, but You have to be strong in these days. These days are really tough. And if you're walking with Christ, you can look at anything you want and you'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
If it's done to help others or to protect others or to give others information which will help them. It's not like you're going and saying, I can't wait to read this occult literature because maybe I can use it.
Yeah.
You're not doing that.
No. When
But
do
you
you
need to
think
educate.
when do you think that do you think all folklore and legends about uh Satan are just that, folklore and legend, or do you think there's any truth to them, and the stories are just, you know, on and on and on?
If you're
Um
reading classic mythology or classic, um, you know, texts or tribal information or whatever, you're going to hear the story of Satan and you're going to hear the story of God. And then you're also going to hear stories of fallen angels, which we call gods and goddesses with little g's. It's all the same story.
yeah. Okay,
It's all
let me throw a story at you then, and get
and
your
back to Zach. Yes, Satan was known by everybody as Stormbringer. Stormbringer.
yeah, I hadn't heard that one.
Hmm.
Yeah, that fits.
Lord of the Wind, Lord of Death, because he was the one that brought death in. Um, so
It's
he
a
has a
couple
lot
of
of
things you said
names.
earlier in your talk that just hit home with me because of my studies right now. The baptism by fire at Pentecost, where the fire
Yeah.
came down over all the apostles' heads, and I'm thinking of Saint Anthony in the desert describing the demons he met that had no knees because they were unable to kneel. Let me
Yeah,
throw a story. Let me throw a folklore.
exactly. The
Yeah,
good example. Yeah.
let me throw a
Yeah.
story at you and just have you tell me what you think of the story. If it's going to make you laugh, if you just going to shake your head, or if you go, well, I don't know. So there's this story. I'm thinking of a famous. I'll try not to use any specific names. I'm thinking of a famous, allegedly extremely haunted and allegedly cursed location. Um, uh, a huge home, if you will, in Ireland. And uh, they've done some filming there over the years. There's been some filming done there, but it's this long deserted country road that seems like it's going to go out to nowhere, but then at the end of this road appears this huge home, and the backyard of this home is just a cliff and an ocean. But there's been so many families that have owned rich, well-to-do families that have owned this home over hundreds of years, all have had terrible things happen, resulting in all these families leaving this home. Many people have bought this home and tried to fix it back up and keep it going. No one's ever been able to do it. And so here's the legend. Back in the day, there was a famous, wealthy head of a clan who owned this home, lived there with his family. But he was also known to be um, like a great gambler and a great card player, maybe poker, I'm not sure. But one night he would have these all night or days long poker or card playing tournaments with other people that would travel for miles around to come and try and beat him. Well, one day this traveler shows up at the home and he wants to play. So he comes in there and he plays. And he's a great card player and he's a long drawn out marathon card playing session. Well, while the guy's there and on breaks, he ends up, you know, drawing the fancy of the clansman's oldest daughter, and they end up having a little bit unfair. She gets pregnant, but she sits in on one of these meetings, card sessions where they're all gambling. Something happens. She looks under the table and notices that his feet are hooves. Well, she screams in horror, and the story is that Satan gets up, or whoever this entity is gets up, and he flies through the ceiling. And where this happened in this home has always been this weird stain in the roof that no matter how many construction teams try to get rid of this stain, it always reappears. But what happened was the story goes, the woman got pregnant, the daughter, had a like a Rosemary's Baby type baby, and then she was out of her mind. And the rumor has it they killed the baby, buried him in the wall of her room, locked her up, and she spent the rest of her life locked up in this room where she died. Well, there was a time where they found the remains in the walls of a female and a child. Well, apparently the hauntings in this one room are so violent they've sealed off the home. And even if you get permission to go in and investigate this home, you can't get into this room. People that have bought the home say, well, we've done so much work on the place, but we've never gone in that room and we don't intend to. I don't know if it's out of ultimate fear or if it's risk versus reward. I mean, I have this huge home. What do I need that room for? Let's just say the legend is true. I don't want to poke the bear. I'm just going to leave the room closed off. Nobody's attempted to even want to go in the room. But they say that the devil visits that home a lot. When I tell you a story like this, do you think it's just a bunch of crazy drunk Irish people?
No, I that's kind of a special story. It's not your average story that you tell, Sean. That one has a few data points that reflect on ancient stories. So there are some Middle Eastern, Mesopotamian, and Sumerian, when they talk about Enlil, we're able to recognize Satan and, perhaps fill in the pieces of the biblical story that we don't get in the Pentateuch or the Septuagint. But it talks about, not just the 200 fallen that created the hybrid Nephilim beings, but that Satan has been known to do other things in order to create let's call it a flesh suit, or a body that doesn't have a soul. So they appear human, they speak human, they act human, but they're missing the emotional puzzle pieces, and they're a perfect receptacle for Satan, who's behind the veil, to merge with. And this would happen at the ziggurats, and it happened in the Tower of Babel, and it happened with perhaps Nimrod. So there is rumor that Satan can at times create beings that are receptive to merging with him. And if you look at the Prince of Tyre and some of the other, different past, templates as Antichrist kings, they're all wealthy, powerful men. Scholars debate it, but it is possible that either through ritual or through, hybrid mixings, couplings, Satan is able to create a human that he can enter and then work through, rather than just influencing them from a spiritual distance. We just don't know. The Bible tells us a lot of stuff, but I think the Bible also omits a lot of stuff because we are supposed to search and study to find these answers. And I think only the most driven of us are the ones that can actually help or talk or, put the information out.
Well, I know your background. Some watching today may not know. You name it. You've been, like I said, I meant it when I said been there, done that, and I find you. I don't know one like you, no one that's experienced the kind of things you've experienced. So let me throw this at you real quick in the short time we have about just under 10 minutes. I want you to give people a big don't. That's okay. I want you to give people a big don't. If they don't want this type of trouble in their life, a big don't. Um, then I'm going to ask you about if you believe in complete integration, the theory of that. Some in my field now believe that if a possessed person goes unattended without being delivered for too long, and this invading unclean spirits in their vessel, eventually they completely take it over, and then they become they become this person, and you have a living, breathing, walking evil spirit in the human form, walking around. And then I'm going to tell you a story real quick of an old exorcist on his deathbed who was very psychically in tune, and he already knew of some of my victories. And through a translator, the translator said, "What he's telling you now is that your victories are the carrot being dangled in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
leading you to the mother lode, which may be your end. So be
Mm-hmm.
careful."
Yep. Yep.
So now I just threw all that stuff at you.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, tell people what the biggest don't
Yeah.
do, and then integration, complete integration, possession,
Okay.
and
Yeah. The biggest don't do is don't reject God. Um, when you reject God and you decide that you don't need God or God doesn't exist, you are vulnerable and you're just a sitting duck. You without when you have God, when you accept Christ and you have God dwelling within and he's written on your heart, which is we talked about Pentecost. Um, it's painful for the devil or any demon or any evil entity to be in you or around you. They're not going to even come close. Now, as Catholics, our prayers, our rituals, Holy Communion, exercised in blessed candles, salt, oil, water, all of our icons, the Blessed Virgin, everything, the rosary, everything we do is just this cumulative pain causing thing to evil. The devil, they really don't like being around us. So the biggest don't, if you don't want these things around you, is, recognize if you're dabbling in the occult or you're dabbling, going to mediums and ghostbusters and all these things, understand that there is at least 2,000 years older with the Hebrews, body of knowledge that tells you exactly what to do. Don't sin. Try to live in a state of grace. Not everyone is Catholic, so I can't say, don't miss Holy Communion and, all of that. They have a different perspective, but they will agree, all of us as Christians, that when you have God dwell, the Holy Spirit within you, these entities, it's painful for them. It's painful for them to hear prayers. As a Catholic and as a traditional Catholic, I pray in Latin because, as I understand it, that language is attached to the cross, which is attached to our salvation, which is just really uncomfortable for anything evil to even contemplate. So, yeah, I pray in Latin just to, carpet bomb a little bit. As for integration of the diabolic or or a demoniac, integration, I think you asked me this question once, and I
I
was like, "Oh no,
probably did. I
oh
probably
no, no, we all have human souls," but we weren't talking about Nephilim, hybrid beings that are soulless. They don't go to heaven when they die. They're just trapped in the earth because they were made of this earth, this realm. They weren't made of God. I really don't know. Integration with that seems to be a thing with Satan.
yeah.
He seems to use those bodies, and the Nephilim blood is still on the earth today. It's not gone. The first batch of it was destroyed with the flood, but we also know they were here in the days after the flood. So they have reproduced and continued on. And those are the beings that, can be grabbed and possessed probably very easily. I'm guessing, I'm spitballing.
Well,
I
people ask me all the time, when is too much too much? Can you protect yourself too much? And I go, absolutely not. Like my wife sees this bottle of holy water and this big bottle of
No,
less salt on my kitchen table, and right before I eat, it gets the blessed salt. And every drink I drink, I always put some holy water in it.
and prayer,
And I
prayer.
have, yeah, and I have these fonts all over my house full of holy water. I walk by them all day long every day, and I can't walk by a font that's full of holy water without dipping my fingers in it and blessing myself.
We're either all
That's all
in,
day long.
you're either all in or you're not in it at all. As people of God, we are either all in, and it's our faith that keeps us alive. You know, God doesn't say, look, I'm not going to take care of you if you're not perfect. You know, God knows, of course, you know, that we sort of we inherited original sin. Therefore, we're all sinners. We're all messed up. God knows it. So Christ came, busted the move, and then the penalty was paid. You know, we're clean, but we have to do the maintenance. We have to do the work. You know, everybody.
You said Christ busted the move. Do you think he was a good dancer?
No, I meant on the cross.
I know. I'm just messing
I know
with
people laugh when I say that, but you know,
I love that term.
I look at
And he
God.
probably was a good dancer.
I tell you, I look at God and I think he is just so crafty and so courageous and so amazing. I mean, I see him as this amazing male entity that's just, I'm just hammer shocked when I read the Pentateuch or the Old Testament. I just fell in love with God. And then when I realized, oh, God was Jesus Christ. You know, I didn't know, I wasn't born Christian. Then I was like, okay, I get it. I love Jesus Christ too. I can really relate now. Because, you know, for me, it was just stupid TV shows of some dude, you know, dragging himself through the desert in ugly sandals. I didn't know the story. But it's
I am going.
amazing.
Oh my gosh! I've only got a few minutes left. We're just beginning with you, and you have my permission. Like, if you are not completely done talking about a particular topic in the measly hour I give you once a month, you can come back and pick up where you left off, or come back with a new topic. But you will be here every first Friday.
I seem to be talking about the same things from different angles every week.
And that's okay.
I mean,
I'm
every
telling
month.
you, I don't even remember any of what we talked about today, having been talked about
Great.
before. So,
Oh, that's comforting.
that's Jennifer. March. We're in March, right?
I think I'm the one person that gets the least views of all, because I often wonder if you were to put the history of Satan
Oh no.
under my name instead of an EIRA WULFNOTHSSON experience, if you were to put, you know, fighting demons or whatever we end up talking about, that's so interesting. More people would probably tune in. God bless them. But
Well,
it's
are
just
you
sort
ready
of
for what
funny.
your next visit's going to be?
Uh-uh.
It's going to be Friday, April 7th, Good Friday.
Yeah, the first Friday.
Good
Okay.
Friday. No,
Friday,
literally Good Friday.
March, April 7th. Do we have a new month coming in?
I don't. Let me see again.
Friday,
We're in March, right?
April.
So
At least it's not April
We're in
Fool's
March.
Day,
So yeah,
right,
it's
Zach?
April 7th, but this is literally Good Friday, the day Jesus was crucified. That's when you're back.
Oh, we better go to
So,
mass. I got to go to mass on Sunday.
if you want to talk about that too,
Yeah.
that would be cool. I love you.
I love you too.
You know, I respect you. You look so pretty today. I
I
loved
do.
hearing your dogs. My
I'm
dogs,
so
I
I'm so
give her a
old.
biscuit and I put her away in her kennel because not that I don't want her roaming around. Sharon's still at work, but if I'm in here with the door shut, she wants to be in here in my
Yeah,
lap.
mine too. And two of mine are senile.
And she'll come through the door, so I have to
Yeah.
put her in her kennel. But
Yeah.
have a wonderful. I
You
can't
too.
wait till Good Friday to have you here. That's going to be
Yeah.
great.
And thank you, Zach. Thank you for all your support and your help.
I love you. I want you to have a great
You too.
remainder of your weekend. Stay blessed. You are a blessed person,
Yeah.
and I will see you next
Yeah.
first Friday.
God bless everybody. Bye.
I'll see you later. And Zach, you look very pretty today too.
Yeah, especially now that I'm out of a car. Huh. It's almost like we were a little bit scared that this show wasn't going to get going, huh?
Yeah, you know, you're the first producer I know that did the show from your car.
Yeah.
Got it going. But God bless you, man. Good for you. Anything you want to tell anybody before
You know what, man? I'm not a
say
button
my
monkey
goodbyes?
for nothing. So, you know, I take my button monkeyness very serious. So we almost did the show from Red Lobster. So
Very cool.
but I couldn't get it downloaded in time. Hey, all I want to say is, you know what, guys, we need you to keep up the good work. We are still taking donations for all the people, all the organizations that help veterans save lives. So please visit www.communitypayitforward.us and go right up top and you'll see community mission to rescue 22. Go in there and you can donate and make sure that you can help us continue saving lives. And we've got a very special announcement that's going to be coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that.
Very cool.
Thank you, Sean. You did great today.
Thank you, brother. Guys, usocc.org, the church I belong to, if you're interested. Bible study, Wednesday and Sunday afternoons at 5 p.m. Pacific. Night prayer every weeknight, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific. If you're interested, go to bishopjameslong.com. Scroll down to the bottom of the homepage. Both the links are there for that. As Zach said, communitypayitforward.us. Go there, support. Thank you to Zach and Adrian Clayton, my co-producers. Thank you to Things Network. Thank you to Temple of Phoenix Rising Entertainment. Thank you to Skeleton Key Network. Thank you to PACT, little p, capital ACT, Podcasting for All Coming Together channel for all these networks simulcasting my show. God bless you all. And BeInspiredRadio.net. BeInspiredRadio.net. Chicky Hot's network, the rock psychic. Episodes of my show are aired all day long, re-aired all day long on Saturdays on her network, and she's got a lot of other really cool shows there, like a lot of replays of old Art Bell shows. It's a really cool network. So, thank you all for being here, because I don't have a show without all of you guys. I will be here. Oh, I know Monday's guest is going to be great, because I've never had her on the show before, and I've been dying to talk to her. Anna Marguerite Brandy Mart. I hope I didn't butcher her last name. Psychic, paranormal investigator, candle maker. How cool is that? That's a lost art, isn't it? She'll be here this Monday, March 6th. All right, guys. I love you all. God bless you all. Peace be with you all.